maybe in the last minute of your life, you want to be something more than a goddamn savage! We're not asshole doctors. Annunziare Mendacio. Ego sum homo indomitus. Insanity. He wanted like wait on won't get in sight. He searches under up the shadows. You like this, girl? You like being food for the immortal? What is happening, my savage friends? You are listening to the voice of Immortal Coil, your oracle of whiskey mysticism. Revolution is my name. It is Sunday, the 5th of February, 2023. Probably the 6th for some of you guys. Fuck this van. And it is time, my friends, to get savage. We got a sort of impromptu stream coming up here. I was just live with Drew on the Midnight's Prism. Very good podcast. If you guys go and catch the replay, we had Wes as our guest today. Of course, Corey and Drew. And I'm actually on that show sometimes too. It's good to see all these people here. We got joining us, we got Papa Cotton, my good friend, His Royal Wookness. What is up, sir? We got RR. Good guy. He's picking up all the references I'm throwing down. The hardest working moderator, Tommy, and the Guinea Pig Collective. Easily mod to 957 million channels throughout the YouTube sphere, and he never misses a show. And we also have Tina Bojan. Tina Bojack, the one and the only. Yeah, so what's happening, one and all my good friends? It's good to see you here. I really dig the Midnight's Prism, although sometimes it doesn't get quite as weird for me. Really dig the show, really dig Drew. Drew, of course, has been going through quite a bit, so I don't blame him for being tangential. But I tend to go a little bit deeper down that rabbit hole. Corey's function on that show is to be, I don't know, like more of a skeptic, more of a scientist. Drew is open-minded, but he hasn't made up his mind yet. But me, I am an experiencer, my friends. There's a reason why my logo is a crystal skull. There's a reason why I don't necessarily put myself out there in a booty-shaking fashion and care about hitting 1,000 subs, although that would be nice. It would be cool to be paid for this sort of thing, but the sort of information stored in my skull is one of those things that maybe not everybody can resonate with just yet. That's all right. I think the people who need to hear this is here listening right now. Tommy showing up. He says he's a resident asshole for every stream. I believe that. And RR agrees. Corey is definitely the skeptic. He sticks to empirical evidence. Well, it's interesting. I always operated by that saying that once internal experience has been held, external proof isn't necessary. Although it is much more difficult to convince people if that's what you're about. There is an inner peace and an inner wisdom that once you've had that God shot or whatever you want to call it, you're not necessarily concerned with having to prove to every last little person out there what is what. as it were. Um, I haven't been on the YouTubes in quite a few months, simply because I think I was going through one of those small deaths in life, the necessary sort of culling of your old experience and your old personality, and then reinventing yourself. And it's one of those things. When I was younger, more idealistic, more a tree huggery, not quite like how Stephen likes to, our good friend Stephen Walton, not quite like how he likes to hug trees, but in the sense that you guys ever seen Josie Wales and Chief Chief White? He was talking about how he could tell the direction of where he should go by how the horned toad is oriented. He said, "I used to know these things before they made me civilized." And I keep on thinking about that too. There was a lot of things that I used to do as a youth, um, because a lot of uh, what I carry with me as my fundamental understandings stemmed from experiences that I had as a youth. Um, you guys are already being silly. So Tommy says, "Never hug trees. Strange little people do that shit." Yeah, you get some wood that way. Um, He's also speculating here. "I'll tell you, I had no clue what to expect from Dr. Pepper strawberries and cream, but you know what? This shit is damn good. Tastes like Dr. Perry and pepper and strawberry Nesquik." Um, Wook has had one of those. Not too bad. I don't know. Um, I did get a EBT card recently, so I've been able to expand my palate in the non hot food milieu. But that'll come as the stream develops here. Um, Specifically, when I was younger, I had a lot of paranormal experiences to the point where I would say paranormal wasn't that quite um, odd. It became very comfortable in some ways. What was not comfortable was trying to relay to other human beings the extent of some of the experiences that I had and how I knew some of the things that I knew. Um, and when I was younger, yeah, I very much cared about that sort of thing. I was definitely like a, if you guys only knew what I knew, the world would change. I could save the world. And I think every generation thinks that for whatever reason. They think that their current understandings is what will reinvent the animal. Uh, but really, I think it has more to do with your trajectory as a incarnated spirit or whatever you want to call it. Um, that's what I call it because that's the experience that I've had. Um, so I was young in the '80s and the '90s. I was a child in the '80s and I was a teenager in the '90s, and you really saw like a lot of the metaphysical and spiritual and paranormal literature exploded at the end of the 20th century. Um, you had a lot more people who were willing to discuss the non-physical, and some of those sources were better than others. I'm not fond of people who channel necessarily because they have to somehow invoke some other personality than themselves to justify the message that they're putting forth. I think that any sane person would claim universal truth as what it is, universally true. And I don't have to necessarily say the spirit of the East or the blown asshole of the West is my source of knowledge, and that's why you should listen to me. Nah, you don't even have to listen to me. Um, what's true is true, and it will reveal itself to you in its own course, its own due time. Having said that, as a teenager, I developed the ability to see auras. I have limited empathic and sometimes psychic, telepathic sort of things. I can usually tell what's going on with group consciousness, especially. And for a long time, I sort of dabbled in that skill. Um, until it sort of uh, collapsed the waveform of exactly how to manifest reality. And when I start talking about those things, that's where a lot of my friends would some of them could get along to it, but a lot of times those things came pre-baked with people's belief systems as far as like if I was talking to a Christian, they could say, "Well, yeah, I could dig that, but only Jesus could do that." Or if I talked to Wiccans, they'd be like, "Yeah, I could dig that, but I'd have to burn sage and throw some salt first." Um, or other people would be like, "Yeah, that's pretty cool. I saw that movie once." You know, organized ists and isms and all that are very much outside of what I'm speaking of. Although uh, I suppose those organizations can be helpful if you're just dabbling your toes into it. Um, Early in my life, I found that a lot of the stuff that I went through, if I needed to go and do some research about it, I'd find the spooky section of whatever bookstore or library I happened to be in. And I could leaf through books and figure out what was correct and what was full of shit. It's like we have our sort of inborn bullshit alarm, which is going off wildly these days. And I'm talking specifically of the 2020s, the late 20 teens. I haven't seen such a large attempt to pull the wool over our eyes in my entire lifetime until perhaps the last 10, 12 years, and it's really, in some ways, it was disheartening to me because I felt like the veil was getting very, very thin. And then somebody up at the top of the pyramid, get it, pyramid, started panicking and saying, "Okay, well, too many people are waking up. We got to manage this shit. Let's. You got any good wars? You know, do we have any stupid ass movies that we can throw out to sort of throw out a breadcrumb, but lead these fuckers off the path?" See that quite a bit. Can we ramp up the special effects in the media and the news cycle? Can we spin the news cycle even more? I don't know. Can we release a bunch of new high power SUVs and cars that drive themselves, and then jerk up the jerk off the cost of gasoline? It's ridiculous. Um, I feel like as far as spiritual skills go, I reached a peak probably around 2013, specifically around September of that year. Um, I was actually asked by I don't know, metaphysicians who had a microphone and a stage to come and speak, and started making sense. But then something felt off for me, and I felt like I needed to pull away. I'm very wary of cults of personality, and on the one hand, I feel like I want to save the world, but on the other hand, I also feel like I want to go and be the old man on the mountain and say, fuck it, let the world burn. You know what I'm saying? Um, and it's like this big dilemma for me. This sense that there's something important that I need to do to change the world. And I feel like this is going on generationally with millions of people, that there's something important that we need to do to change the world. But in order to do that, we have to somewhat engage with the world on the world's terms. And that's where I start to have difficulties. Cause it's that old saying where like you want to be the president, well, you got to be a congressman and you got to be a local representative. And by the time you climb up to the presidency, you've basically sold out, and they have enough dirt on you that you have to go along with the program. And then the president, who the fuck is that? They don't even really get to do anything except go on the camera and read the fucking speech. They don't get to decide shit. It's just somewhat nefarious. So how do we go about doing that? I think the only possible way is to affect things on an individual level and try to remember how that works. And that's how it was for me. So I'm gonna go into a little bit of how the past year has been developing for me. Hey guys, open the door. Yeah, go ahead. Got a bit of emergency. Hang on a sec, guys. All right, the universe has a sense of humor. I appreciate you guys sticking around. Uh, I'm living in a basically like a halfway house, and there's shit going on in the house that has nothing to do with the point of this program. However, I do have to deal with that. Um, I'll get back into it. Tommy's saying EBT, nothing wrong with that. Been there before. Lie, cheat, steal if you have to. I have done all three in the sense of surviving. Um, let's see. Wook's gonna go talk to DES tomorrow about EBT. Hey, no shame in that, buddy. I'm actually eating real food for dinner, as it were. Okay, and thank you guys for standing by. Okay, so I've had a real big challenge with all that stuff, trying to be uh, the type of man or dealing with the type of man that society recommends you being, which is a you got to be the 9 to 5er. You got to make so much money. You got to have a domicile and a vehicle, and it's especially once you've reproduced. Um, there's a certain caliber of things that you're supposed to have accomplished, and it's drained a many a man of his essence and left him a husk of who he was in a shell. And I'm saying man in particular because there is a concerted attack against the male in our society. It's almost anathema to be a straight white male fully in charge of his experience and fulfilling that traditional role of what men should be. And then you throw experiences of spiritual or metaphysical on top of that, and you have a quite a confused society, quite a confused message. Um And then when you push back against that, the minions of the society, which is pretty much your fellow man or 90% of your fellow man, is going to say, well, hey, what the fuck are you doing? You're not doing it the way that you're supposed to be doing it. You're doing it wrong. And you have that sense inside as the person doing it. No, I'm not doing it wrong. Everybody else is doing it wrong. And they're like, well, fine. If you're going to do it wrong, we're not going to play with you. We're going to take our truck and go home. And I'm just that sort of obstinate asshole where I'm going to be like, well, fine. Take your truck. Go the fuck home. See if I care. um, so I don't care about the trappings of society. I don't care about necessarily the cushiness or the huge castle or the Maserati with the self filleting switch attachment, you know, with the transgender fluid inside it, right? I think that's a bunch of bullshit. Um, and what that manifests as is a great discontentment. I found myself working a job that I didn't care for to pay for a house that I wasn't welcome in, to stay with a woman who wasn't appreciating me. And that sort of contradiction wears on the soul to the point where, in the effort to keep all of those things ended up falling away from me anyway. Because I didn't see it then, but it's basically the universe telling you that you don't belong somewhere. If you're trying your best to show up and be somebody that you're not, then you're not going to thrive in that environment. And it's sort of like you're tempting fate to grow a tumor. You're not you're not being who you really are. You're being what society wants you to be, but you're not thriving. So yeah, the woman left. The job was quit. And great walk in life, as it were, began. All right, stand by, you guys. All right. And I'm digging this. We got some good feedback in the chat. We got Tommy. You can only be who you are meant to be. Correct, sir. And you were one of those guys that I would call when I was having those issues. I have people try to make me something I'm not. They wore themselves out trying. Yeah. Yeah. If you're not yourself, who are you gonna be? Right? We got RR. Before you can kill the civilization, you have to kill the man who guard it. That's right. And that reminds me of that quote about strong men create good times. Good times end up creating weak men. I'll have to find that somewhere. It's on my Instagram. The hyper materialism of the culture is very poisonous. Yeah. It's literally the pleasures of the flesh. And if you confuse who you are with your body, you're in quite the pickle these days, because you have machines that will literally talk to you and tell you that they love you. And you know, you can put on VR and have a machine that will fuck you, and then what are you? Know thyself. That is the name of the game. Tommy, I will always be who I am, and those that think I shouldn't be or I should bend to them can go get fucked sideways off a cliff. Yes, sir. That is the Tao of Popeye, isn't it? I am what I am. That's all that I am. Well, yeah. So I took a hike. I had a good job, and I said, "Fuck it. This job does not represent me. This job does not uh, define who I am." Um, and I seriously, I went and disappeared into nature, I won't say it was fun. I was outdoors for a little while. That's how come you guys hadn't heard from me. Um, and I do have to admit that I did allow some bullshit thinking to encroach into my cranium. Um, I spent a lot of time being drunk, more drunk than I should have been, like unhelpfully drunk and also unhealthily drunk. I had this saying that it was hurricane season because you can get 2 tall cans of hurricane for $3. Blech. Because believe it or not, when you're not working, people aren't paying you. And that's like another thing that I find to be bullshit. It's like, why would you have to pay to live on a planet that you were born on? I don't know. And then that's even more convoluted when you throw your identity into that of the working man, because it's like, well, you're not contributing. You think that you deserve a handout? No, I don't want a handout, but I don't want to be forced into a life of menial bullshit just to participate in society. And that's the point of the today's sermon, is that I pulled back from society because I was disenfranchised by it. It's if this is what society is, then you guys can take it. Take this dick out of my ass. I will hand it back to you. You can shelve that shit because I'm done. And most of my best friends are kind of fuck you type of people as well, so they can dig where I'm coming from with that. But the thing is, we're also social creatures, so it's like, fuck all this shit. I don't need it, but like, where's my tribe? I remember being drunk at one point, sleeping on a construction site, screaming at the sky, "Where's my tribe? Send me to my tribe. Where's my people?" You know, you guys are my people, but aside from a couple of you, like, we're all like spread out in cyberland somewhere. I could say people like Tommy and Wook, you guys are my bros, but I'm in Washington, and then you guys are other places, which does not defeat the broness, but like, I can't like show up and just be like, "Hey, do you got a can of soup or something?" No, no, I had to steal from Walmart for that. um, so you find yourself at this sort of, or I found myself, I shouldn't say you. I'm only here to talk about me. I found myself at this crossroads of bullshittedness and just wondering where the fuck my idealism went. Where the fuck, like, nihilism is not always a useful thing. I would like to elevate nihilism to a healthy skepticism or a healthy suspicion of what's on TV kind of thing, but I don't necessarily want to give up hope on the entire globe. What I needed to do was figure out a way to reclaim myself, and what I figured out ultimately was that I was letting people into my head, and the people that I was going to for support were the wrong people. Um, and it took me like living outdoors like that during the fucking cold. I live up at a northern latitude. It gets very cold and and wet and miserable and nasty. Like you need to bring extra socks, kind of misery, because your feet will itch and your toenails will turn colors, and just the shit that normal people don't have to go through. Um, so what happens? I got off the street. I found a sort of halfway community kind of thing. I had some buddies that were putting me up in the woods. Um, they had an RV, but it didn't have any sort of internet or anything like that. Um, and there's a lot of people on YouTube who they'll use their sub count as some sort of indicator of their self worth. I don't even have 400 people subbing to me, and that ain't important to me. I think the 400 that I have are true motherfuckers. And whoever needs to know about me will find me through organic means. Um, but I went, well, fuck it. I went to rehab. I was drinking unhealthily and I needed to regain some balance. And it just so happened that, unlike jail, rehab does give you a little bit more freedom. Um, Jail does give you three squares and a bed, but you also have to deal with a primitive mentality, and you have to sometimes get more violent than you particularly want to. Um, which is not to say I would back away from violence, but the wise man does not invite violence unless he really, really has to, right? So I enter into this place feeling defeated, deflated, and generally like a piece of shit. Um, Severely drunk, of course. But as my mind cleared and I've embraced the sort of little bubble that it was, I sort of got to re-examine who I was in relation to community. And community was something that I felt alienated from, literally an alien, right? And what I came to was rediscovering fundamental things that I knew as a teenager, like I was saying. Simple little things like how to manifest reality. Simple little things like how not to let what everybody thinks overwhelm your trajectory in life, which is very hard to do sometimes. Very, very hard to do. Um, and I guess the best way I can explain it is they put you in group settings, and within a group setting, if you're forced to interact with them, you quickly find out through animal means what rung you occupy on the old status bar. You know, humans with that sort of sense of knowingness from an animal standpoint. You're this type of person. I'm that type of person. Uh, it's all well and good, but what I ended up finding was and I don't know why it's so hard to talk about stuff like this because I guess I fear that I'm shooting out of my mouth about this kind of thing, but I feel like centers like that for rehabilitation represent a good slice of the human population. And what I found was that I am smarter than the average bear. I'm more articulate. I'm more of a leader and an organizer than I realized that I was. And once I explain myself pretty well, I feel like people generally dig what I have to say. Um, Not only that, but I was able to I don't know how to explain it. It's that sense of being an empath where you know how people are thinking and you can feel how they are presenting themselves inside. So you can take that and sort of figure out who they were when they were sick and how they uh, got to be where they are. And it's a bizarre little mirror because it also let me know how I got there. And I had embraced some sort of fucked up living, but not quite in the same way that they did. And that whole thing about screaming to the sky, like, "Where's my tribe? Send me to my people. What the fuck am I supposed to do?" Reminded me of another insight that I had when I was younger, which was that which you seek for yourself, give away. Anthony Kiedis taught me that, right? in that in that one song. Uh so what I found was that there was a lot of people who were bereft of very basic spiritual principles, things that had been with me for so long that I grew cynical about them. And I'm sitting here wondering like how come people? And part of it was because I had withdrawn from people. The reason how come people wasn't because people lacked whatever the fuck I thought that they should have. It's because no one was there to teach them. And then I realized, well, maybe that's one of my functions. If I'm supposed to be some sort of a leader, maybe I'm supposed to teach people common sense. But how the fuck do you do that? Well, in a place where people have been completely broken down to their most defeated selves, it's starting from the basics. Um, I would get into extremely philosophical and metaphysical discussions with people, and I would call these people non-believers, and not in the cult sense. I'm not trying to get people to drink Kool-Aid. It's just I've had experience with how the fuck shit actually works, and I was in a position to prove it several times. Um, I would say I would say something about like how manifestation works, and they'd say, "Well, how do you know?" And I say, "Because I've done it." And they were like, "Well, how do you know that that's not just a coincidence?" And I want to say the same thing fucking Obi-Wan said, the real Obi-Wan, Alec Guinness. In my experience, there's no such thing as luck, or to paraphrase him, as coincidence. I don't see coincidence as uh, disparate elements. I see that as evidence of a higher intelligence at work. Um, Now, I was not so highly intelligent at the prior point in my life, but I was now ready at a position to start walking my talk. And what I found was that since I was unplugged from society and not really pressured to whatever make $1,000 by the end of the month, that I was more free to go into sort of these experiments with reality. Um, so life hands me a couple of different personalities to work with within this group. I had this one kid, a buddy of mine named Wyatt, and he was about 25, 26, and he had been homeless and a drug addict and all this other kind of stuff. He was trying to get clean. Uh, and he came across as a very aloof guy, and we would talk about certain things. I remember one point he told me he didn't believe in outer space, and I was like, "You're not one of those flat Earth motherfuckers, are you?" And he was like, "Well, no." And I was like, "So why don't you believe in outer space?" And he goes, "Well, I don't think that we actually went to the moon. I think that there was a Hollywood studio somewhere." And I said, "Well, you know what? You're kind of halfway right and you're kind of halfway not right." And that led to big talk about crashed UFOs and we can take ET home kind of shit, and how NASA's a smoke screen and really cool stuff. And he slowly started opening up, and he basically told me, "Yeah, I kind of go around and not talk about these sort of things because I don't want people to think I'm crazy." And I was like, "Yeah, I know. I could kind of sense that about you." Then at the same time, in my group, I had this dude named Nate who was a Christian, and this dude, uh, what the fuck was that dude's name? His name was Jack, and he was a atheist slash agnostic, and whichever one he was kind of differed from day to day. Now I'm spiritual, I'm not religious. I think religious dogma and ceremony has been one of those tools to separate humanity since we were very young as a species. It's all over the historical record. anybody listening to this or tuning into a podcast called Savage Spirituality would understand that sort of thing. But it was funny watching them bounce off each other because they both like had a piece of it, but they were both blind in a certain area. And I would sit there and sometimes talk to them individually because I don't believe in the God of the Bible. The God of the Bible, I think, was closer to what you saw in the movie Stargate with Kurt Russell. Um, and I don't believe that God's like an old dude in a beard who sits on a throne in the clouds watching you masturbate. That's not God's function. That's something that mankind made up to guilt you into acquiescing your power to a higher authority. And as the great George Carlin once said, God made the entire universe, but he needs money. That's bullshit. Um, so my atheist agnostic friend would come up with very good points about stuff like that. He'd say things like, "Well, if God's so all loving, then how come when people pray for their grandmothers to be cured of cancer, he kills them instead?" You know, and there were very good questions that if you're solely scientific and you're solely agnostic or atheistic, your brain's going to close off the answers to those sort of things. Um, and I was like, well, I know the answer to that. And he's like, well, what? And I said, well, it's not something that you're not going to be able to accept because it's intangible. And he's like, well, what? And I said, well, you have to account for reincarnation, and you have to speculate to the existence of spirit, and you have to speculate to the uh, goals that spirit has in mind for a particular incarnation. And just speaking in terms very matter of factly. The other thing I hate is when hippies just make it so foo-foo and la-la and, you know, puffy, and they're barely in their bodies dancing around, little hypocrites, that they tend to take the credence out of those notions. And there's been a lot of sort of suppressed evidence. Let's say there's been kids who were born, let's say in the 80s and 90s, who remember dying in World War II on sunken ships, and then when they were asked about who served with them and what the name of the ship was, it's verifiable in records. Shit like that happens. How can shit like that happen? Um, I've had instances where friends of mine, as teenagers, they died, and then I would encounter their parents years later and not know that their parents were the actual parents. I just talk about. I'd have these people pop into my head as I'm having this conversation. They'd be like, "Oh my god, that was my child," and I'm like, "Well, who do you think brought us together?" That sort of thing makes sense to me. Doesn't make sense to a lot of people. Uh, Christian guy, on the other hand, my buddy Nate, he's a good guy, but he was struggling with like he was almost embracing being a recovering Christian. And what do I mean by that? Well, 90% of the Christians that you will meet, when they're not being dicks about you joining their church, they're very nice people. They generally care about people, and they would feed the homeless and clothe the naked kind of people. Um, and so I don't see any need to necessarily go and disrupt the religion. Um, I do remember when I was on the streets, there was a there was a Christian dude who came up with a pamphlet, and he was trying to get me to come to his church. And I was a little bit sauced, and boy, I let him have it. You don't come knocking on my door talking to me about temple unless you're ready to go toe to toe with the immortal, the immortal one. Um, so this dude Nate, he's perceiving the limitations of his old belief systems, and I would have fun telling him things like about the Apocrypha. He had no idea that the Apocrypha even existed. Um, And he's like, "Well, what the fuck is that?" And I'm like, "Well, you know your Bible, right?" And he goes, "Yeah, I've been reading the Bible since I checked into this place." And I said, "Okay, uh, how familiar are you with Genesis?" And he said, "Pretty familiar." And I said, "Okay, do you know about Prophet Enoch?" And he's like, "Well, he's only in the book for a line." And I said, "Yeah, he's in there for about 3 verses. The most important one being, you know, Prophet Enoch lived 365 years, and then he was not, for he walked with the Lord." And he's like, "Well, yeah." And I said, "Well, don't you ever wonder what that meant?" And he's like, "Well, what do you mean?" And I said, "Did you know that there was a book of Enoch that was around for thousands of years until the Council of Nicaea kicked that out of canon?" And he's like, "What's the Council of Nicaea?" And I was like, "Oh, take a knee, son." You know? So working with these people, it's like I don't know that this recovering Christian would have ever started recovering if I hadn't have been a drunk asshole and went to treatment. And this atheist guy, I don't know that he would have embraced anything larger than himself had I not been a drunk asshole and gone to treatment. So I'm sitting there interacting with these guys and this other dude, Wyatt, that I was telling you about, who ended up having paranormal experiences his whole life, and he just hadn't had anybody to talk to about it. Maybe there is a point to my pain and suffering. Maybe it's not all worthless. And I started sort of therapizing. Is that the way to conjugate it? It's like I took myself to therapy and started doing this thing in my head where I'm looking for the purpose of the pain. I'm looking for the pattern. I'm looking for the string that's going through the pearls here. What exactly is it? Because I've always had this desire to help people and help pull humanity's head out of its ass. And could, for some reason, me working with alcoholic genes be part of that? Um, Ultimately, I would say yes. Um, One of the most interesting things in dealing with the recovering Christian and dealing with the agnostic atheist, I wrote down something on a notebook and I showed it to them at exactly the same time. And I wrote, "God made the devil." And I put it down and I had them both look at it and I just laughed because both of them took that one little sentence and took it in the only way that their previous philosophies could interpret it. We had the atheist agnostic looking at it going, "God made the devil." And in his mind, that's like reinforcing his perspective on it. He's like, "Yeah, if God made the devil, then how come blah, 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 blah." And it sort of unravels the thread of the story that way. But then you take the recovering Christian and, well, why would God make the devil? Oh my God, blah, 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 blah. And it's just like, I don't know how to explain it except like if you gave like a, if you gave 2 3-year-old some calculators and they didn't know what to do with them, you know? Then the other interesting thing was actually playing with the tools of manifestation. I would do this thing where I'd wake up in the morning and my quarters was up on a hill and I had to walk down this hill. It was like this 5-minute walk to get to the the facility, and I just voice my intentions to the universe. I'd say, "Okay, I need this, that, and the other thing to happen, and I'm giving it to you, and fucking make it happen." And it would happen within 24 hours. Small things, big things, it doesn't fucking matter. Um, I've regained a lot of confidence that way, and it moved from this sort of theoretical experience of what I would expect and what I would hope into an active process. And again, it was shit that I did as a teenager. Simple things like writing something down and then like using it as a mantra, or observing yourself in the midst of chaos and not losing yourself in the midst of chaos because everyone else's thought forms are so overwhelming. There's definite skills to that. I started thinking about why I enjoyed things like Star Wars and the concept of the Jedi is because they had unique gifts that they had to develop as a result of their own self discipline. Because if they didn't have self discipline, their gifts could go awry. And it's not that they're not using it, but they're using it unconsciously towards ends that they might not realize the effects that stem from the misuse of those sort of gifts. And I realized at a larger level, everybody that I was running into was mirrors. They mirrored back to me some sort of like strange corner, strange psychological corner within my own self. And it's like a good example. You go to the grocery store and somebody's there and they just make you uncomfortable. And it's not like they're being weird and like farting on you. It's more like you just notice somebody and they're not doing anything, but for whatever reason they're making you uncomfortable. Well, why is that? You know? And that's why I would say don't doubt your intuition about people. They might be weird. There might be something about them, or there might just be something that they're presenting to you for you to consider within yourself. Maybe both things are true. The universe is a very weird and wonderful place at times. Uh, so we got the chat being kind of silly again here. There we go. Tommy's saying, sometimes you need a kick to remind you how far off the path you have gone. Indeed, sir. Um, yeah, it's very difficult sometimes because the second you lose yourself and your morals and your scruples, you'll start to die a little bit. Definitely. R saying coincidence is a word we give to connections we cannot empirically explain. Correct. Um, I dig that when humanity emerged from the dark ages, science was a very valuable tool. We could describe a lot of the natural macro phenomenon through easily replicable experiments, which led to the development of science and technology and medicine, all those sort of things was born of that new thinking. But then you get to a point where that sort of thing would plateau, and you would say, if I can't taste, touch, smell, or hear it, then it doesn't exist. And then people proclaiming that authoritatively. Um, and we still have yet to embrace that wisdom of Nikola Tesla, where he says humanity will gain more by studying non-physical phenomenon in 30 years than it will their entire lifetime or their entire existence of the human race. Um, and if you want to put on the tinfoil hat for a minute, yeah, the powers that be know that. That's why they went and raided Tesla's fucking notes as soon as he died. They don't want us looking into that, but they sure as shit will. The CIA will look into remote viewing and psychic uh, ability as a means of giving themselves tactical advantage. But they don't want us doing that because we might catch them with their fucking pants down, won't we? Tommy says, "Never take ET home. You see the size of that finger, right? He will hit your G spot, your H, your I, your J, and K spot." The dirty little mofo is waving that finger everywhere. Can't be trusted, right? I'm digging that. Yeah, don't smell ET's finger. You don't know where it's been. We got Jeff. What's up, buddy? How you doing, sir? just sort of talking about the past couple months here. Um, so yeah, I guess the grandest example of these, because I did meet a couple of those guys, like I was telling you, we had some interesting stories there. But when it came time for to reemerge, to enter back into society, I had nowhere to go. You know, I'd gotten to the point where I was leading the nightly meditation, you know. For like 3 weeks I'd teach people how to meditate. I teach them how to quiet their minds, and not in like the bullshit hippie way. You know, we weren't sitting there, you know, you are the sand, you are the water, embrace yourselves. That sounds like fucking Thor Ragnarok, where she's like, you were in the presence of the divine master, whatever the fuck his name was. Um, and that's the thing, like things that like spiritual things like that, spiritual skills, psychic skills that have been so watered down and commoditized. I don't know, made into a commodity, made into a uh like a cheap gift shop version, um really turn me off, you know. And then the personalities they get to promote those things really turn me off, because I'm trying to tell everybody that these things aren't weird or mysterious. They're just like a muscle we haven't exercised, and it's easy to start doing it. Um, so I didn't have a place to live when people would ask me like, "So where are you from?" I'd be like, I'm not from anywhere. I'm from everywhere." And they'd be like, "Well, what do you mean?" Like, I'm from Puyallup. Where are you from?" And I'd say, "I'm homeless." And then they'd be like, "Oh my god, I'm sorry." And I'm like, "I'm not sorry. I was homeless because I chose to be." You know, I came from a place where no one was supporting me. My only friends were people who existed in my smartphone and on my computer. So what the fuck point was there? You know, I'm not gonna go and get a Mick job and, no, no. And so, "Where are you gonna go?" And I was like, "I'll find somewhere." And they're like, "Well, where? Like what?" And I said, "Well, something will suggest itself, and I'll just basically do the equivalent of trusting in the force." And sure as shit, the last 2 3 days that I was there, I became aware of a sort of transitional housing place that comes with a basically like a 3 month grant, where you don't have to pay rent for 3 months while you figure out what you want to do. And I'm not saying I'm never going to work again. What I'm saying is that I don't want to be a slave to the fucking wheels that grind. I need to find something that's humanitarian and something that doesn't like exploit or rape people. You know, I need to figure out some way to be of service and to um, keep to my ideals, and also allow me the freedom to communicate and be artistic in my own way. You know, it's also true that for a long, long time, uh, I wasn't touching YouTube because I didn't know what the fuck to do. You know, I was kind of doing that fandom menace thing for a long time, and I still believe in some of the message there. The fact that there's social engineering elements that's corrupting our entertainments to sort of spin reality, but it's a deeper infestation than that. It's just easier to talk about entertainment because everybody knows that Disney is fucked up. But there's also 600 other channels to tell you how fucked up Disney is. So why would you subscribe to mine particularly, unless you thought I was fun or sexy or good looking? But you're staring at a crystal skull. I don't have tits. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna entertain on that level. The only thing I have to offer is my perspective. So, is being a fandom menace channel even something that's worth doing these days? Um, I'm thinking not. I'm thinking that there is a component of that that will always exist, but I'm thinking that there's something that I've experienced personally in life that's unique to me, and that perhaps that's what I'm supposed to be communicating. So I'm really cranking my gears about how to do that. I've been speaking with several of my friends along those veins. So I'm thinking the next couple months on this channel is going to be fairly interesting. And the type of content that I'm going to start creating is going to be more grassroots. I'm actually working on this thing I'm calling a savage documentary, where I'm sort of explaining the places I've been lately and why I was gone for so long, and uh, sort of the internal struggle, the struggle of just being true to yourself in this modern age. You know, you got people so completely brainwashed that you can't even be a straight white guy anymore. You know, that's what I happen to be. And everybody from every angle is telling me that it's wrong. And I'm saying that's fucked up. Identity politics are designed, and you can even like break down the word, to divide us, to separate us. And that's easy to do if all you think you are is your fucking shell. You know, if you look at me and my fucking body and my white male dick, then you're only perceiving one third of me. And that's wrong, you know. Um so yeah. Yeah, I'm slowly putting this together and slowly figuring this out. So being sober is a good part of that. Being clear headed and not having this cloud, and I'm not knocking anybody who wants to get fucked up. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that in my personal journey, um, it was easy for me to dull my senses and then not think about shit for a day, for another day. But those problems would always inevitably come back once I sobered up, and then I'd have to do it tomorrow. Except tomorrow I'd feel like shit. So what do I suffer through the inevitable hangover, or do I just pour more sauce on top of it? So, yeah, a lot of cool stuff here. Beat to the sound of your own drum, says Tommy. Never worry about copying someone else's tune. Yes, sir. Yeah. And that's difficult, man. Um, think back to Sid Vicious' rendition of My Way. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Um, and that's what's odd about the YouTubes. You get to know people to an extent through their content. You see how easy it could be. But the reason that it was easy, or it appeared easy or relatable, is because those people were doing something that hadn't been done yet. And then it just sparked a flame, you know, and especially as it pertained to the Phantom Menace, when a couple of those big channels were initially coalescing, it was important that what they had to say came out. But then, like I said, aside from maybe 5 to 7 of those channels, there is a periphery of hundreds of smaller channels that are saying the same exact thing and reading the same exact articles, except you come over here and this girl's tits look different than that girl's tits, so you're going to look at that. Or this guy has a different funny little mask he's wearing, or a different way of synthesizing his voice. And by the time I've seen 2 or 3 videos, I I don't even care about the other whatever 299 videos I hadn't seen. Because, like, are you going to be funnier than Drunk 3PO? I don't know. Are you going to be more acerbic than Ryan Kennel? I don't know. Can you be more British than Disparu or fucking Mahler? Probably not. Those are guys that I look up to, but if I went and made the same video that they made, nobody's going to watch it because they're already king of that fucking mountain. But I can guarantee you none of them are talking about the fucking Nephilim, right? None of them are talking about practical manifestation, right? None of them are talking about how to see energy and what it can do for you, right? Right. So I appreciate you guys fucking hanging out. Um, ours coming back with you exist to create your own drum beat to add to the cosmic symphony and not replay another's. Yes, sir. And I would drink to that, as it were. Advanced civilizations, they don't make music with guitars and amplifiers. Nah. They groove to the resonant frequencies of whatever uh, astronomical bodies. You know, like black holes resonate. The Earth has a resonant frequency, which is very close to the 5G towers, by the way. Jupiter resonates to its own thing. The sun resonates to its own frequency, and music is frequency. It's oscillation. We sing a song as a solar system, and shit, we got a long way to go, don't we? So, yeah, guys, I appreciate you coming out. All of you on the live, I appreciate you coming through, and everybody listening on the replay, which usually is what happens on this channel. You're gonna see some unique content coming out. I've put out a number of shorts because I think that you remember that show in the '90s, Salute Your Shorts. Yeah, salute my shorts. Um, just little one-liners that are more in line with how I feel about shit in the first place. And then, like, lo and behold, some of those things have massive engagement. I put out this like 30-second short and it gets like 6K views. And then I put out a video about, like, I've been sitting on this thing about Teth Adam for a couple of months. But what happens is by the time I'm done making it, Black Adam's not like a thing anymore. Even though, like, I wanted to talk about like Mesopotamia, no one's going to give a shit about it. So stick around, stay tuned. Same bat time, same bat channel. This has been Immortal Coil, and until next time, my friends, stay savage.